And so we begin episode 3 by keeping our eye on the horizon with a captain of the online travel industry, John Brown, CEO of Agoda, calling in from Thailand.
Hi, Siew.
Hi, John.
How are you? Good to see you.
Okay, I can't hear John.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
You're really soft.
Really? Hold on. Let me check. How about now?
Okay, John's really soft, so I can't hear him.
Let me, if you can't hear me, let me maybe try to take my...
Okay, I got it. I heard
got
you.
it? Okay.
Yes.
Good. Okay. All right, good. Perfect.
Welcome to the virtual world. I can't hear you. Mute, unmute.
The hazards of all of these virtual conferences, which hopefully this comes to an end soon.
Yeah, so I was going to start off with saying, like 1 minute we're relatively free and then the next we are locked down, right? And I know you're in Phuket, which is a great place to be locked down. But what kind of new thinking does a leader need at such changeable times?
I think the most important thing is that people have to be agile and flexible and nimble. And it's one of those things, I feel like we're lucky at Agoda that we've always been pretty nimble anyway. But when something like this happens, where change comes along so quickly, you have to be able to shut down certain teams, repurpose people, put certain initiatives on hold, start new ones. And we've been very good at that. We've pivoted in many areas during the pandemic, and I think we've delivered some great product for our customers and our partners.
Right. So really, really keeping agile, like from one day to the other. Now, what's one old thinking you had to throw out, John? Not saying that you're old or that you've always had old thinking, but what's one old thinking that, the travel industry has had to throw out at this time?
One thing at Agoda that I always believed that Agoda could sort of go it alone, that if we kept executing really, really well, everything would just fall into place. And I think that by and large is true, but in the time of the pandemic, it really was more of an all hands on deck, let's get together and help each other mentality. So it was us working with partners, us working with governments in the region, certainly working with our customers. So unlike in prior times when Agoda might say, let's go off and do this time around, it was more like, let's find out what our partners really want, what they really need. Let's find out what the governments think is going to be reasonable and allowable in those markets. So there was definitely much more of a sense of collaboration getting through this than I may have felt in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's a realization that no one can do it alone, right? And so one thinking in corporate life is also not to mix business with politics, right? I mean, travelers always say travel is travel and politics is politics, and given the nature of this crisis where really our fates are being determined by governments, right? Do you feel like a large travel company like Agoda, which is part of the largest travel company, maybe other than Google, Booking Holdings, how can you play a more active role using and addressing the prolonged travel restrictions and border closures?
I think we play an active role in many ways. We have a very good government relations department, and we work very actively with governments all around the region. First and foremost, asking them, what do you need to get travel coming back? And that's especially important in markets like Thailand and Southeast Asia in general, where such a big piece of the GDP is dependent upon travel. So we work with governments and say, what do you need? And then we say, Agoda is the premier tech company. How can we help? And a great example is something like what we built with all of our ASQ products, the alternative state quarantine. We built it literally in 3 weeks in Thailand. Once we found out what the government wanted, we then built another very similar program in Hong Kong. Much more recently, we rolled one out in the Philippines and again now coming up in India. So that's a great example of how we were able to, first of all, ask the government, what do you think you need to keep your people safe, to get travelers coming in safely? And then once you make that safety and medically advised decision, we say that we can use our technology and our people to build it in record time. So more and more governments we find come to us now saying, wow, you guys are really able to help us achieve what we think we need to do to get our population safe and to get our doors back open. So that's just one of many examples.
Okay, so another thinking in corporate life is also to watch and respect the competition, right? And so, Traveloka is reported by Bloomberg to be close to finalizing a SPAC deal, valuing the company at about $5 billion, right? So According to publicly available Traveloka accounts, which is lodged with Accra in Singapore, in 2019, pre-COVID, they generated revenues of 232 million, plus 27% year on year, and an EBIT loss of 272 million. Are you surprised by any of these numbers, John?
Frankly, I'm surprised by all of them. Certainly the valuation numbers, I think everybody out there would say the same thing, that valuations seem rich these days for companies like Traveloka, which, by the way, it seems like a great company. And I speak to the executives there from time to time, and it's not a diss on Traveloka, but that, yeah, $5 billion feels frankly pretty high. And I think if you read any of the financial press, they would say valuations globally these days do feel pretty rich. And people have been calling for a long time for those valuations to come down. So far, they have not. SPAC fever seems to continue more or less unabated. But yeah, the valuations across the board feel high to me.
Right. So, I'm tempted to ask, right, based on this 2019 numbers that we're seeing, who has the largest Southeast Asia business, Agoda or Traveloka?
I'm not allowed to talk about the size of Agoda, but I guess a couple of things I can say. One is Agoda has not lost money in those years. We've always made money. So in terms of profitability, you may want to infer, although I'm not saying it directly, that we're bigger in terms of profits, but in terms of number of customers, et cetera, I'm not allowed to disclose that information. I would also, though, point out that Agoda is not just in Southeast Asia. Agoda is in dozens and dozens of countries all over the world. So in terms of our footprint, obviously, just in terms of the countries we operate in, Agoda is a big global company, whereas Traveloka, I believe, is much more concentrated in a few markets in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it can feel like it's a country, right?
It does. It really does. A lot of days. It feels as complicated and as chaotic as a country.
Now, another old thinking of OTAs, I don't know if it's old or whatever, but it's around performance marketing, right? But at the same time, anything spent must be rigorously measured, right? But at this time, I'm also seeing some breakouts of branding campaigns like Expedia, Verbal, Wigo, all coming out with some really lovely creative advertising. What new thinking have you developed around marketing post-COVID?
Post-COVID, we're doing some of the same stuff. We are doing some campaigns that we put out on YouTube and other markets, on other channels like that. But we still, by and large, I think the bread and butter in our industry is still in pure performance marketing. So we excel in Google PPC and other search engine PPC. We do very well on Meta. And we do put out the branded messages on video. We've experimented in multiple markets with outdoor advertising, TV advertising, et cetera. And we'll continue to do that. But we're still going to have a pretty heavy mix of the classic performance marketing, where I think that you can better track the dollars for one. And more importantly, you can better attract the customers.
Okay. So you talked about one tech product that you seem to be pretty proud of, which is the ASQ product, So can you tell us one tech or product that you spent time on which turned out to be useless?
Yeah, a good example, we're always playing in the fintech space. And about 2 years ago, we rolled out a product that would effectively allow us to be a payment processor for hotels. So we would put our own box into hotels so they could process customer credit cards through the rails effectively that were set up by Agoda. And the idea would be that we would save hotels a fair amount of money by doing so. It turned out that two things. One, from a regulatory point of view, that was a pretty tricky endeavor. So there were a lot of regulation to go through once you get into that fintech space. My lawyers were telling me that there was even the possibility of jail time if we got it wrong in certain markets, which, it threw me off a little bit. And frankly, the profitability was a little bit less rich than we thought over time. So we decided to stop doing that. The good news is we took that entire team and pivoted them. So what we do now is we can self-issue our own virtual credit cards, which allows us to pay our hotels much more easily and much more cost effectively. So essentially, we took what was meant to be an external product for hotels, turned it into an internal product that sits within our ecosystem, but it still uses a lot of the same underlying expertise. So we,
right.
Again, it comes down to pivoting. We had to pivot away from the old product, but we had enough expertise and learnings that we were able to pivot into something totally new, which is working out very, very well.
Well, that's really interesting. So it wasn't completely useless. I mean, you turned it around to something else. So
Yeah.
you're a consumer-facing brand. So I'm going to ask you, what consumer tech do you think will win consumers over? And I want you to rate them 1 to 5, yeah? According to interest, 5 being highest. Translation tools.
Translation tools, I have to give a low score to it. I think a 1, because a site like Agoda literally has hundreds of millions of pages in 40 different languages. So if we don't have translation tools, we simply can't exist. So I really consider that table stakes. I don't think that's a differentiator.
Okay. Chat.
Chat with our customers. I believe that's also, frankly, really almost table stakes, that all of the experiments that we run show the customers want that. So I'd give that a 2.
Okay, so what's not table stakes? What's out there that could differentiate you?
I think a couple that I'd seen on your list. I do think payments and being able to accept alternative payments is critical. But again, I think most people are going to be able to do that. So you'll need to get that done. AI is something everybody's doing, but the skillful application of AI can make all the difference. Do you really understand your customer well enough? So when he or she comes along and is looking for a business hotel for a 3-day stay midweek, that your AI behind the scenes is serving up exactly what that customer wants. Everybody tries to do that, but the people who can do that really, really well, so that the website really feels like it's something where you feel at home, that every time you go to Agoda, you realize, oh gosh, this is giving me exactly what I've always been looking for. I think that really will be a differentiator. I think some of the tech that I talked to you about last time we were on the phone too, about enabling customers to check in and check out of a hotel via the mobile app, or to review their folio, or to even use their phone as a room key to get into the room. That's complicated. Nobody's really cracked that, but I think the person who does, or the company that does, I think that will be a big loyalty builder as well, because that will remove one of the big pieces of friction that still remains, at least as far as accommodations are concerned.
Right, and you would have to find a hotel group that's willing to integrate and open up their PMS to you. Have you found any willing partners?
We did about 2 years ago, 3 years ago now. We ran some experiments in Singapore, actually, with a handful of hotels. And frankly, it worked well in that the customers really found it there to be a great value proposition there. It is a little bit hard working with all the PMSs, even if you just looked at Oracle, for example. There are so many versions of Oracle. And I'm just going to say here, for the sake of the record, it's not really the most modern chunk of software out there. It's very, very hard. So I think that's the reason why people haven't fully cracked that yet. The PMSs are old-fashioned. They're not easy to work with. And there's a million different ones out there. But when you really do figure out how to make that happen, that really will be a game changer for the customer.
Okay, I'm going to take a question from the audience. A topic that I know that you are very supportive about, passionate about. The role that you play in supporting sustainability travel, or has it happened? And I know you're going to say you support it, but what concrete actions can a OTA like yourself do to support this move towards sustainability?
A couple of things. We have sustainability guides at Booking Holdings that we give to our hotel partners. So first of all, we say, this is the best way for you to move toward becoming sustainable. So we help hotels do that, first of all. Secondly, we don't want to be in the business, though, of actually being some certification agency that says this hotel is now hereby declared sustainable, because that's something that you need a separate expertise to do. But we recommend those types of agencies to our hotels. We put badges on our website that customers seem to like, which says that, hey, do you want to be in a sustainable hotel on this vacation or not? And we see increasingly the customers seem like they want to do that. And once we put a badge like that on our site saying this hotel is sustainable, the one thing I can guarantee that happens all the time is every hotel that doesn't have that badge, they call us within literally a week and say, hey, how did that guy get the badge? What do I need to do? And we say, well, here's how you go about doing it. So you really begin to create the ecosystem in that respect. And because we have so much customer demand, we can help, funnel them toward the right type of hotel. We really do find that it adds a lot of value to the space.
Okay, so I'm going to spend the last 3 minutes talking about talents. Right now, shift in buzz from travel tech to logistics tech, gaming tech, everything else is booming. What do you do to keep the buzz going around travel tech and keeping your staff, motivated, that you don't lose them?
So no, it's a great question. So two things. One, people who are working in technology, we find again and again, they themselves want to be challenged and they themselves want to work with people who are doing really, really cool stuff. They want to feel like they're learning. So first and foremost, we have some of the best technologists in the industry. So when new people are coming along and they talk to those people, they say, gosh, I get it. This really is pretty cool. I want to learn from that person. So, our top technical gurus in Agoda, they attract people around them. Now, what you do to keep those gurus in Agoda, you have to keep letting them run with new ideas. If all we were going to do forever was the same old accommodation stuff, they would get bored. But as soon as we say, hey, we're going to build a fintech product like I just talked about, or the ASQ product, people get excited all over again. So we try to be nimble. Yeah. We move people around. One of our key foundational notions at Agoda is to allow people to take ownership. So a relatively junior tech person at Agoda can raise his or her hand and say, you know what, I want to build ASQ. And as a matter of fact, that's exactly how ASQ was built. They said, I want to do this. And they got a team of people together and they built it. And they were super excited about that. It was their idea. They took ownership. They were fired up, and it really made a difference for Agoda and certainly for the markets where we work. So I think it's right. You have to give them latitude to do what they want to do, to grow, and surround them with the best people. And then you're off to the races.
Right. So A players attract an A team, and you got to give them A projects to keep,
it is so true.
Keep them motivated. Okay.
It is so true. And 7 years ago, but before we had A players, it's really hard, frankly, to get the first couple of A players in if you only had B players. But once we got some of those A players in the door, then they tend to attract other A players.
Right. And you got your A players through an acquisition. So is that the way to go?
All those guys from that company click. I don't want them to hear this because their heads are going to get too big. But yes, if you can find a small company like that with great technologists like we did, bring them in by all means. It was a great acquisition.
Okay, so we're going to end with a rapid fire. All right. So this is the fun part. Every good campfire needs a song. What's yours?
Redemption Song by Bob Marley. Everybody loves it, and it's a great song. It means something, and if you want to pick up the guitar, it's not hard.
All right. Okay, we'll get you to sing it for us one day. Okay. Every good campfire needs to be enjoyed with a good friend, right? So if you could invite any personality, celebrity, fictitious, or real to your campfire, who would you ask?
Can the person be dead or not?
Yeah, dead or alive. Imagination now.
Who I would invite? I have to say, I would invite Albert Einstein. Just one of the smartest humans who ever lived. And imagining him at a campfire singing Redemption Song is actually kind of interesting.
And where would be the best place to listen to Albert Einstein sing the Redemption Song? The best place to have a campfire?
I'm partial to campfires on beaches. Frankly, it's hard to find places where you can do it, but campfire on the beach with Einstein sounds good.
Okay, well, I'll see you on that campfire in Phuket with Albert Einstein. Okay, one of these days. Thank you, John. Thank you for joining us once again.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, thank you.